Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Unravel Your Mind. We're here to transform relationships to love and life. There's a bunch of questions that have rolled in. I'm excited to talk about them, to share so many good things, so many good questions, so much good conversation. I'm going to jump in with the first one, which is, how do I attract a conscious man who has already done his shadow work? This was actually a question from last week, and I didn't get to it. And I think it's really simple. Do your own. Keep doing your own. I happen to know that the person that asked the question is doing their own. So I'll take it to the next step and say that it's really about attracting people who are in their journey at a similar vibration that you are. And so if you're not finding those men who have done their shadow work or are doing their shadow work, then there might just be a reflection there for you to just think a little bit about how you may want to dig a little bit deeper into your own, because there's some kind of vibrational match that's coming, not of course with the things that you want, but with the shadow side of things. So I think it's always easier to see the shadow in others than it is sometimes in our own work that's on the table. And so I think it's really just digging deep into that, raising your own vibration, and really holding the space for all these beautiful men out there who may not even have stepped into their journey, but are certainly at a precipice to do so. And so we never know when they're going to jump through, but don't wait around for it either. So I think that's another really important point. So yeah, shadow work. It's also something we can get really, really deep into. And I don't think that we need to put such a heaviness on shadow work. I think we need to continue to raise our own vibration. And of course, doing the shadow work helps us do that. But we can go back ancestral lineages deep into shadow work forever and ever and ever and ever. So I also don't want people to get stuck in shadow work when there's opportunities to transcend and to ascend and transform through things, and we're still sort of sitting in this darker energy and not releasing it. So it's really important to release it. Hopefully that answers your question. If I missed something on it, I'm happy to add more. Please give me some comments in the chat, or anyone listening on replay, if there's something that you want clarified, something you want to add. I always love to hear what you have to say. So please put it in the chat below. Okay, the second item on my list is actually a little bit different. It's not, it's a question, but it's actually quite personal to me. A friend, so one of my friends said, a friend gave me some feedback about your book. And so I was really curious to hear what that was. And the book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, Unraveling the Mind to Unveil Illusions. And they said they liked it, this friend of a friend, they said they liked it, and also commented that it was a white privileged life. What do you think about this? And so, initially, well, let me back up to say that when I launched the book, Spirit was really, really clear with me that I needed to not let other people's comments, especially negative comments, I'm not saying this one is a negative one, but not impact me, because everyone is viewing things from their own lens, their own place, their own journey, their own ascension, their own awakening, and to just let everybody be exactly where they are and whatever questions that they ask, and don't take anything personal. So that was the first thing I did, was just sat with myself and said, okay, so this is that person's perspective. And on one hand, of course there's some truth to it, right? I'm white. I can't change that. I don't want to change that. I come from a Scandinavian heritage, and we know that there are prejudices out there, and there are situations where opportunities are given to white people over other people of color. I think that's changed a lot, but there's a reality that's happening in that. I'm a woman and I'm relatively attractive, and so you could say that, oh, well, that helped you to be able to live this life. And, there's lots of things that people can start saying about why, I could do it and someone else couldn't, and sort of this whole white privileged idea. And then I dug a little bit deeper into the whole idea of it. And I thought, well, isn't this interesting? Because the Barbie movie just came out, and the Barbie is white, and she's got blonde hair, and she's pretty. And they spent the majority of the movie talking about how women have been suppressed. So I kind of felt like, well, wait a second. Like, I grew up in a small town of 2,500 people. I had parents who, were not wealthy. I didn't get any hand holding per se. I made these decisions. If you ask my parents, they would say, we don't know how we got this child that has all this bravery and courage. So I brought bravery, courage, tenacity, independence, made my own money, left college, went back to college, did all these different things. And yet someone else's lens says, oh, you have white privilege. And it's like, but then someone else says, oh, but women have been suppressed and held back. And I'm not saying that any of these things don't have truth to them. I'm just saying, like, let's focus on the forward motion of this. Let's focus on being really acknowledging women, men, women of color, men of color, women of whiteness, men of whiteness. Let's really be looking at our ascension journey, not all of these characteristics that we want to put labels on. Again, I'm not discounting that these things happen. I know that they do. I have experienced them with partners and with friends, and a lot of these issues are real. So I am not discounting the issues. What I'm saying is that the only thing we can control is our own lens of perception and what we choose to reflect out into the universe as far as what we're seeing. It would have been nice for someone to have seen, which a lot of people have, if you look at the comments on Amazon, that I was courageous, that I took tenacity, that I was brave, that I did all these things in the face of the reality that there are some issues, have been lots of issues with women in the workplace, and that I was able to maneuver through those. Not all of them. I stumbled, and that's the other point of the book, is that I share all my stumbles, like my deepest, most vulnerable stumbles in the book. And so it's always just interesting, the lens of perception that everyone puts on to our storylines. And again, the main point is to not get caught up in the storylines, right? I don't get caught up in my own storylines. I don't get caught up on how other people look at my storylines, what other people have to say about my storylines. And that's been one of the biggest and most wonderful gifts of launching my book, is to put myself out there so vulnerably, and then have to really just navigate through what people's responses are to the book. And so it's been a lot of fun, and I'm so appreciative of everyone who has supported the book and made comments about the book. And I'm happy to hear more comments about the book. If you're interested, the link is in the notes below if you're completely unfamiliar with the book. All right, let's go to the next question. And of course, I want to hear any of your comments, anything you disagree with, anything that you agree with, a new perspective, a new lens that you have to shed on that last conversation. So, all right, let's go to the next question. The next question is, a dear male friend of mine has shared emotional intimacy with me, but they are not interested in being physically intimate with me. I'm having a hard time with it because I don't want to lose them, and yet it's hard for me to talk to them and not want more. Any thoughts? Yeah, lots of thoughts on that. I think everyone is a projection of ourselves, and there's something about that person that you're seeing in your own self that you want to take this relationship to another level of intimacy on a physical level. And I would say thank the person. I'm not saying you have to literally say thank you to them, but thank the person for not acting on a sexual urge when they weren't really wanting to be in a physical relationship for whatever reason. Because chances are they're dealing with their own shit, and they're trying to work through and navigate, with their own heart where they are. And if you were supposed to be in an intimate physical relationship with them, you would be. And you have to trust spirit, that spirit's guiding them as much as spirit is guiding you to make a decision about being in this. And I know you're a beautiful person. You wouldn't even be asking the question and having the consciousness around it if you weren't. And it sounds like this person is giving you the most intimate aspects of themselves. If you're getting emotional intimacy, and we're assuming that this person is not married or not in another relationship and having an intimate relationship with you on the side, we're assuming that that is not the case, then you're getting the best of someone. That is what we want, the juiciness in relationships, whether it's a friend or a female, male, a parent, a colleague. Like, for someone to really give you that emotional intimacy is really, that is the icing on the cake. That is the cherry on the top. And so I think it's about being incredibly grateful for that. And I'm sure this individual is grateful. It's just a reminder that, for someone to really share those depths is so important. And it says a lot about who you are for them to trust you with that. And just as easy as I'm making this sound, and as difficult as I know it really is, you just need to move on. You need to move on because you're creating a fantasy about something that doesn't exist. If they do not want to have a physical, intimate relationship with you, the last thing you want to be is in that energy of, why don't they want me? Why don't they want me? Because not only are they not going to want you, but you're going to have energy out in the universe that nobody wants you. So be really, really sensitive to the fantasies that you're creating around this person and what it would be like to be in a physical, intimate relationship, because chances are it would be nowhere near what you think it would be. It's because you're creating what you think it would be. And this person has resistance, saying, no, this is not what I want, for whatever reason. And it doesn't have to be personal. Could be that they don't like the way you smell. Could be that they're just not physically attracted to you. And it could be that they are, but they're not ready to share themselves in that physical way because they're still working through their own wounds. So there's so many things. And if you have the type of relationship with them, you could just simply ask them, just for my learning, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what is it about me that you think doesn't bring a physical attraction, or are you attracted to me and it's just something that you feel like you just can't act on? If you're having that level of emotional intimacy, it might be worthwhile to ask those tougher, deeper questions, even though you may not really want to know what they have to say. You really do. And I think it'll be really helpful for you for other relationships and other men that you meet down the road here. So hopefully that's helpful. I would love to hear the comments in the chat if you have more to add or more questions. Let's go to the next question. So the next question is, what do you think of the pharmaceutical industry? Well, if you've read my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, you know that I spent 15 plus years in big pharma. And I am, oftentimes people want to give me a hard time about this. I am a believer in the pharmaceutical industry, but I'm a bigger believer in people's personal accountability for their own health. Now, why do I say I'm a believer in the pharmaceutical industry? Because sometimes there is a need. Sometimes we have not been able to do what we need to do on our own physical, mental, spiritual health side of the fence, and we get snags in the body. We get snags in our energy system. We get snags in our chakras. We get snags in our gut. We get snags in our brain. We get in an accident. We have all these things that happen to us that could be really helped by pharmaceutical medication. So I think that the pharmaceutical industry is necessary. It's needed. Yes, there are lots of options in homeopathic and naturopathic, and I am 100% for all of those if it resonates for you. Now, for example, I've had a couple of different divisions that I worked in, and the last one was in women's health. And we had birth control pills and intrauterine contraception. And those pills helped me family plan. In the end, I didn't end up having a family, but I'll be honest, if I didn't have birth control pills, I probably would have several children at this point in my life. And that wasn't my plan. Now, look, there's lots of other options. I don't have to take birth control pills, but being abstinent is the most effective, right up there with birth control pills. And that wasn't something that I was interested in doing. So I feel really grateful. And it's one of the reasons why I felt really wonderful about what I was doing in the pharmaceutical industry, providing women options for birth control. Yeah, there's condoms. You can use that. I don't think that was an option that I was interested in pursuing. So it gave me options. Now, when it comes to other medications, you have a choice. You have a choice of what you're going to do. If it means drinking less alcohol, eating less sugar, eating less carbs, that's your choice. All of those things can help reduce inflammation in your body. But if you don't want to make those choices and you want the inflammation and you just allow the inflammation to come, you're probably going to end up on some kind of heart medication, some kind of, whatever kind of medication. So I just always say, come back to personal accountability. What are you doing for you and your health? What are you learning about? Are you learning about natural options? If you're not, then I don't think you really have the wherewithal to be dissing on the pharmaceutical industry when you're not actually taking the action yourself, right? So the action is always within, the healer is within. And that's, I think, the point, more so than having this discussion about, is the pharmaceutical industry bad? Every industry has bad in it. Every industry. Look, there is manipulation, corruption, everything in every brand that's out there, or industry that's out there. Not every brand, sorry, but every industry. There is some level of corruption, some level of ego that's in there to just make money at the cost of the consumer, and with products that are not necessarily healthy. So that's where I think it's important to support other companies. Maybe you want to support B Corps. You want to support companies that actually have humane ways of doing business, that actually are conscious entrepreneurs, people who are wanting to expand the consciousness of the planet, people who want to provide products and services that can help us with the ascension and help us with the awakening. So, but that's your choice, and the power is in your money. The power is in your purchasing choices and your purchasing decisions. So I just would like to encourage us all to spend less time pointing fingers about what's bad and good, and who's bad and good, and just taking the personal accountability for our own health. And there's a time for pharmaceuticals, there's a time for nutraceuticals, there's a time for homeopathic, there's a time for everything. So there's a time for just good old healthy organic food that doesn't have pesticides, or food that doesn't have GMO, right? So let's just get back to the basics here and not have to, sling these ideas back and forth about what's good and bad. All right. I'd love to hear your comments on that as well. Next question. If you're blindsided or overwhelmed by a situation, how do you overcome it? Recently, I had a situation where I was house sitting and the alarm went off. When I was out to dinner, the homeowner called me and reprimanded me. I was so shocked and went through an enormous amount of guilt, only to realize that it brought up a childhood wound. How can I catch that quicker? Well, first of all, I commend you for catching it at all, right? Like, we don't have to put timing on this, but it sounds like you caught it pretty quick. And having heard a few more details about this in another conversation, I know that when we have that visceral response in a situation, we're like, wait a second, why am I so angry? Or why do I feel so guilty? Or why do I feel so sad? And it feels a little bit unrelated to the magnitude of the situation. Like, geez, I shouldn't be this upset about this. And you did that right off the bat. Like, you felt into the emotion as opposed to shove it down or project it onto someone else. You said, wait, what is it within me that's really causing this level of emotion? And you sat with it. And, if you can find the childhood wound that brings this up, then you can also blow it up. You can let it go, release it, and not have to deal with this kind of reaction in the future. This was specific to guilt, right? And being able to release guilt around situations that are unrelated, well, not unrelated, but that are just stirring up that trigger, right? So they're related in that way, but the level is unrelated in the standpoint that, you didn't necessarily need to feel that guilty, right? It was a situation and it happened. So I think to do it quicker, I don't know if we need to put the pressure on quicker. I think we just need to really honor ourselves for when we do have these emotions, and sitting with it like you did, and really digging deep in there, just saying, hey, show me, what is the issue here? What is the deeper issue here? Maybe it's not, in another situation, my spouse or my child or my this or my that, right? Maybe it's just like that pain body within me that's ready to come forward for observation and release. And the release part's really important. So hopefully that is helpful. I would love to hear more in the comments. If you're listening to this on replay and you have something similar, please type it in and let us know what you're feeling about this. Okay, next question. How do I balance doing what's best for my children and what's best for me? I believe it's important to follow my dreams, but at what expense to my child? My friend just rented a house 2 hours away so they could go to a better school. Meanwhile, they have to sell their business and home for all of this. Another friend moved her family 2 hours from her job so that her kids could get out of the city. How does one balance doing better with being content? This is a great question, and I think it's so personal and individual to each person, but the blanket thing that comes to share is to do what's in your heart, right? And sometimes that does mean that you're giving up something. And I think it's also commendable when we give up something when we don't actually know what's coming next. And that's usually the reason why we don't make these choices, because we're so scared of the unknown. Now, I don't know anything about your friends that moved 2 hours away, but they may find that with all the unknowns that they had going there and all the preconceived ideas that they had about what this new life was going to be, they may find that it is the most blissfully unexpected situation, or they may find that it's like miserable and like too far away from all of the urban, lifestyle things that they want, being closer to the city center, being closer to, different aspects of cultural events and things. So I would say that it's really about the experience, right? It's about just feeling into where you want to be in your heart, and then just continually letting go of all the thoughts that come of why you shouldn't do it, right? Okay, you're going to take them into account, but you're also going to take into account all the reasons why you should do it. And you're also going to take into account all the reasons that you don't know, all the things you don't know. And are you at a place where you individually or you and your partner can move through those unknowns and helping everyone navigate with those unknowns, right? Because you might be like, hey, yeah, let's go do it. I'm totally fine with the unknowns. And your husband may be like, yeah, no, like that doesn't make any logical sense. I don't know how this is going to happen. Or your child may be like, I don't want to leave where I'm at. Change is too much, right? And so it's having those deep family discussions as best you can about making lists, like what are the things that I really love about where we're at right now? What are the things that are frustrating for me where I'm at right now? What do I see in the new place? So just doing some of the basic pros and cons, but most importantly, when you're doing the basic pros and cons, that you take a moment in between each one of them and allow yourself to really feel the emotion behind the pro or the con. And that's where you're going to find some really juicy stuff, right? The juicy stuff. And then you can start to filter through, what are some of the mind messes and what are some of the real heartfelt things, and also finding the things that you guys link up on, right? What do you all agree on? And then when you go to that new place and you have that shitty day, which everybody does, you guys can all come together and say, okay, but here is our North Star. As a family, we said that we really wanted to experience this feeling, and this location allows us to do that, whereas the other one didn't. So let's stay focused on this, because otherwise we can spiral really fast into all the crap things, because change isn't always easy. So that would be my recommendation is, I know that the question was about balance, right? It's about how do we balance doing better with being content. And yeah, I mean, the words being content, I get them, but I think life is fun when we're not always so comfortable, right? Yes, we can be comfortable, but let's just add a little spice in the recipe here and there. Let's add a little, jazz it up a little bit. And these are big moves. I recognize that. But I think if you sit and you really do the work, you're going to find that through that work, you're probably going to hear some emotions and thoughts from your partner or your child that you wouldn't have heard without posing this big of a move, right? And I think you'll be surprised. I think we'd all be surprised when we get pressured, not pressured in a bad way, but like, like there's a decision to be made here and we're looking at a drastic move. It does bring like a sense of timeliness and a sense of pressure in a good way that, if I don't speak my truth now, I'm not going to be heard, or a decision is going to be made in a direction that I may or may not want. So hopefully that's helpful. As always, put anything in the chat if you have additional questions or want clarification about that, but I think that's going to be really helpful. Okay, next question. People can change, but on their own. You can't change anyone. How does one change themselves so that a relationship changes for the best of the other person never changes? Who never changes? I think that's what they meant to say. Well, first of all, I always say, look at your soul contracts. Yes, you're right. You're on it. You are the one that needs to change. You can't change your partner. You can't change, your colleagues, can't change your children. But when you change yourself, you show as an example how to live in a way that it resonates for you. And if you're with someone who's really resistant to that or pulling you down from that, then I think you really need to make some real deep conversations with yourself and with the others involved about what is the purpose of this relationship moving forward if it's not aligned. If it's not aligned in making positive change, right? If it's not aligned in moving us forward into our happy places, if it's always pulling us back into the muck of life, then why would we choose to continue the relationship in that sense? So I'm not suggesting that you give someone an ultimatum, of course not, but I am suggesting that you share with them that this is really important to you. And that if it doesn't become important to them, that it may put you in a situation to make some other choices. So that would be my recommendation is, and also, I mean, as I started soul contracts, I do believe that there's a lot of times when our soul contracts are up with loved ones in our life. And it's at that point, that juncture, where if we want to continue to grow, we do in some cases need to separate, we need to leave, we need to move forward in a different way. And sometimes that separation can really jolt the other person to do their work, and you can come back. So it doesn't always mean that it has to be an absolute, but oftentimes when that soul contract is done, it's done. You got the lesson that you guys came in to learn from each other. All right, so there's lots of questions coming in on the live chat. I'm going to go over to that one for a moment, and then we'll come back to some of the pre-submitted ones. I have experienced something similar about reacting. You said we don't have to fix quickly, but in my case, I can see I could get physical. For example, a child probably playfully hit me from behind. I was so scared and surprised, but without recognizing it was a child, my body reacted and almost hit the person back. Thank you for your honesty, by the way. The boy was so scared and cried, and I was blamed for being childish by the mother and her friends. I couldn't argue back, but it was not the conscious me. I don't even know how to fix it. I'm afraid of this reaction that I tend to avoid kids and try my best not to turn on them to show my back. It's exhausting, actually. In this case, I want to heal quickly. Do you have any advice? Well, first of all, just, my heartfelt feelings go out to you, because I get it. I mean, you're saying like you got hit from behind, you were scared, and your body reacted, so it makes me feel that there is potentially a trauma response that's trapped in there. There's an anxiousness about yourself that, and kids oftentimes can be, okay, my dog Lily, love her dearly. She loves everybody and she loves children. But if there's a child under 2 years old, she gets really nervous because their energy is fragmented, and they're unpredictable, and she can't handle it, and she's got to growl or bark or step away. And so I feel like, in a sense, children have this a way of being loose cannons, right? And so when they bump us, or they scream, or they cry, or they whatever, it can be really jolting, especially if we feel like we're already a little bit on edge just because our life is challenging enough. And so I would look at, is there, something maybe to look at in a trauma response? Is there, anxiety, that underlying anxiety that's just like hovering there, that you might want to get to just be in a calmer state? And, maybe take it to yoga. Maybe take, like the feeling that you had that day, that jolting, take it to your yoga class. And as you're doing your yoga moves, that you just feel into that jolt and release it, and then show your body another response, right? So that you're training your mind and your body together to be exposed to something that felt traumatic, and then breathe through it, so that when it happens again, maybe the response isn't so quick to turn, and maybe then you're just more grounded in external stimulus that comes at you unexpectedly out of the blue. Hopefully that's helpful. If it's not, I'm happy to continue on with it. And I think, the mother, yeah, it's hard, because mothers are always going to have a real quick, response to to defend, to care for their children, right? It's just how it is. That's what a mother does. And sometimes there's not a way to resolve it if it's like an instant situation and you don't know the person, or if you do know the person. I think just be back in your heart and just say, I'm really sorry. I reacted in a way that I didn't want to. It was just my bodily reaction. Just being really honest, like just honest with like what happened. Like, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry. And even though the child may have been like out of control, and you really wanted to look at the mother and go like, why couldn't you have like controlled your child? They're running around mad, I'm guessing. But you're responding to this instant reaction of anxiety, anger, trauma to a child. And I think that if the mother then can't receive that honesty on your part, you just have to let it go, and also feel into it for yourself. What was the lesson there? Why did I call that in for this little incident to happen? And is there something more, without getting too hard on yourself, which I guess is the other thing, is don't beat yourself up about it. It happened. It was a perfect storm of events. There's something in there for you, a nugget. And the good news is the fact that you're even being so vulnerable to even bring this up on the show means that you really, really want to heal this within you. And so I don't think it has to be quick, but I think it can be if you are just really present with what the situation was, and replay it in your mind. But don't let your mind get at it. Get your heart at it, right? Don't let the judgment of the mind get at the situation. Get your heart in it. And even, without having the person or the child or the mother near you, do the gratitude and the forgiveness energetically. And that way it opens your heart, and that you've made it right within you, even though you felt like the action was wrong. You made it right within you because you sent loving energy to the child and to the mother. And then you have to let go of whatever their response is going to be. You see them again on the playground and they want to be mean to you, and you just have to find that space within to smile and keep moving forward. So hopefully that's helpful. If not, please give me more insights here on the chat. Okay, let's go back to the questions. How do we nurture a relationship so we don't get stuck in our ways, our patterns? I love this question, and I think it's a fun one because, when we first fall in love, everything's so exciting and everything's new, and everyone talks about that 1-year honeymoon period in a marriage, right? And then what happens is people start to come in with judgments of like, oh, well, I like this or I don't like that about you. The mind really comes in strong. I'm not saying like right at 1 year, but I'm just saying that's kind of like, it starts to, so the 7-year itch comes about, right? And by 7 years, people are pretty much deciding like, can I put up with this or not? Right. And so I know I'm digressing slightly from the original question, but there's a pattern that happens our judgment of our minds and our expectations of our partners. And as women, I'm just going to say stereotypically, often women have a lot of thoughts, a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings about things, and they expect the man to read their mind. And that's where it also goes south pretty fast, because a man cannot read a woman's mind. They can be intuitive and they can feel into our emotions, but they're not going to think like we do. So there's that. Now, I just want to really go back to the question, because so we don't get stuck in our ways. I think there's some really fun things you can do. When you first started dating, you went to new places, you had new conversations. And so, you could do something as simple as once a month, honey, let's go on a date to a new restaurant, a new place, or do a picnic, or let's take a new walk, a different way that we go, or let's take a walk. Let's add something new every morning to our routine, right? I mean, how many of us? I do it every day. I get up, I have a very similar routine. I get my matcha tea, I read, I do my journaling, I do my meditation, I do my walk with Lily. And while I really love that structure, and I think that's good, and you should keep the structure, it's nice to just add something new, something different. So I added in lighting incense that has a significant meaning to me. And so it can be really simple stuff that you just add newness in, right? So if you're finding you're going to the same places, that, oh, let's choose once a month that we're going to do something different. And it could be that way also with intimacy, that we kind of get in these ruts of sexual intimacy, that it's like kind of the same thing over and over. And maybe you buy a book on intimacy, maybe you go to a class on tantra, right? You learn something new, you do something new with them. You would do it early in the relationship, so why do we let that go later on, right? And also just look at the patterns. If you don't want to keep the same pattern over and over and over, then just make a commitment once a month to maybe change something ever so slightly about your pattern. Maybe it's that you guys do one more thing at the gym, or maybe it's that you go to the gym. Maybe it's that you go to a spin class instead of a yoga class, or something that kind of takes it up a notch, but also gives you something to talk about with each other. Maybe it's that you both say, oh, let's pick a book. Let's do, each of us read a separate book, or maybe we read the same book and then we come back and we have a discussion around it, right? So it spurs on new ideas, because sometimes what happens in relationship is we're in relationship because we share so much in common with the person, that then there's sort of a sense of boringness, because you kind of gel into a similar ideation about life and about this and that and the other. And so having some zingers in there, maybe it's even inviting a new friend over for dinner, and a new couple or a new single person, or adding something in that provides a different opinion and a different lens and a different way of looking at life, and then making sure that the two of you are also talking about that difference. So anything that we can bring in that helps to expand us and not just get us all hunkered down in the comfort, right? Especially if you've been dating for a long time and you find someone that you absolutely adore and love. You don't want it to change in so many ways, but I do think that there's a lot to be said for evolving in the relationship and not getting too comfortable, because then we just gain weight and get bored and find things to pick and poke at our partners. So just there are little things that we can do that can really help take it up a notch and learn more. So hopefully that's helpful. Happy to hear any comments in the chat about that. All right. I think we are almost, we're getting close to the hour. I've got one other pre-question. If anyone else on the live chat wants to jump in and ask anything, I am more than happy to add it in here. So the last question that I have is, my teenager doesn't want to talk with me, and I'm worried because I think something is going on in their head. How do you think I can get them to share and talk? Well, I'm sure there's a lot going on in their head. It's been a long time since I've been a teenager, but I know that the last thing I wanted to do was to talk to my parents about what was going on in my head, unless it meant that I needed something from them. So this is a tough one. I admit that I do not have teenagers. So what I'm going to say is just channeled from spirit, that, a lot of times we're not going to get what's going on in someone's head. But I think the more time we can spend and the more presence we can have, which means that we're not on our phones, which means that we're listening, which means that we're making eye contact, which means that we're hugging, which means that we're spending time at dinner, maybe at the dinner table a little bit longer, that we're not always in a rush to just keep moving, that we actually make a conscious effort to be present with our children. And that gives those windows, as I know from having nephews, and I love the time that I've spent with my nephews, that as much as I want to ask all these questions, they are not interested in answering questions from their auntie. But the quieter I can be sometimes, some comments come up or some questions come up, or, I can throw a little question in there. So I think the other thing is, just don't ask so many questions to get inside their head. Let them come out with their own timing and their own emotion, and, acknowledge what you think might be going on in their head in a nonverbal way, which is, if you think that they might be sad about something, maybe you put your arm around them a little bit more than usual. Maybe you write them a little love note and you put it in their backpack or their lunchbox or something, something that just lets them know that you're there. I think that's so important. And that's so important for all of us, is just to really know that someone else is present and holding the space with us and interested in what we have to say, but doesn't always need to ask or pry or dig. And so I know teenagers are tough. I know it's a tough crowd, but I think sometimes the less we say and the more we show is really the answer to getting a little bit more out of their heads, and into their hearts. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, we are down to the end here. I don't see any other live questions, so I'm going to wrap it up at that. I so appreciate every week all the questions, all the love, all the support. If it's helpful, please give the video a like. I would love if you subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get notifications when I go live, but every Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time. I'd love to see you here. I'd love to hear from you, and I can't wait until next week. And I look forward to sharing more insights and wisdom as we're all on this journey together.